You're listening to Kelly and Steve, and this is Coupled with Chaos.
90 Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After, Season 8, Episode 12, Pornocchio is the name of this one. I guess that's where we'll start first, but add me to the list of things that I don't know. I think we've established there's a lot of stuff we don't know this weekend. Don't get a dog with long hair on its rear end.
Yes.
And that I really don't know what Italian music sounds like. What the heck was this? This sounded like bad, like yacht rock, just a bad Jimmy Buffett, Michigan, Italian, whatever this was.
You know what I think I want to think of Italian music? Sadly, goes to my addiction to Godfather. Mm-hmm. It's the band doing the funeral march in the street. I actually like that. I've looked for the soundtrack so many times.
It's maybe a bit morbid. That soundtrack does exist, so it is out there.
But I can't find that that funeral march.
No. That's probably not good. I would not be happy if when I came home from work you were playing a funeral march. I would just rear march my way right out of the house.
Right back out.
Yeah, I'm out. Gotta go.
I've seen Godfather so many times. It is sad.
I'll try this later. It was something, I use that as a reference. You know, I've got the young person that's working with me. And I use some, I'm trying to get out, but they keep pulling me back in reference. Yeah, and he didn't get it. And so I'm like, crap, all these things. And, you know, so many TV and movie references, and Joy and I would go back and forth so much about what those are. And so many of those are, I guess, just a part of just my vernacular.
Our generation.
Yeah, it's just what it is, right? I'm trying to get out, but they keep pulling me back in. Right? This would be it. And so, the title is Pornocchio. And if we went back in our podcast, probably, I don't know how long it's been since Gino and Jasmine have been around.
Way back at the beginning.
Seems like a decade, but it's probably been 2.5, 3 years, I would assume. You called it early.
I certainly did.
So you said that you were very convinced.
That he had a porn addiction and would have intimacy problems.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what?
So,
yes to both.
No, normally the Jasmine we see is angry, yelling Jasmine. This is not the Jasmine that we saw today. It was very calm.
She's come a long way. Yeah.
It's very calm, Jasmine. Mm-hmm. And I think Gino felt defensive.
And he certainly was. You know why? Because she pegged him. 100%.
You know that he knows that she knows this about him, right?
Right. He just doesn't want the world to know. But yet he's trying to gaslight her in front of America and thinks that she's not going to then reveal the truth. He doesn't know who he's dealing with.
He's been on this, you make me upset, and so we can't be intimate.
You're the reason I can't do this.
She opened up about something which, again, we know it's Gino and Jasmine and anything's possible, but let's move forward with what happened in this episode. And that Jasmine says that he picks a fight with her before they're ever going to be intimate, and then uses it as an excuse for
why he can't be.
This is pretty deep, right?
Yeah, and I think it's probably true. I mean, like I said, I've said it about him from the beginning.
Yeah, this is not a huge surprise.
No. There's always been a creep factor about him. And I suspected he had this problem.
Yeah. Well, and she did not, in all of this, you can say what you want about her and them, she didn't bring this up in front of the group.
No, she did not.
He was the one that introduced the intimacy stuff into this situation.
The conversation. And she let it slide in front of his family. I mean, that was big of her.
Yep.
Because, man, I think I probably would have fired out the truth right then and there. You're not going to make me look bad in front of your family just to save your own shame.
Gino's family looks bad enough here with this horrible music. I mean, I get live band and whatever you're calling this, but this is a bad move. This is going to make people not come to this your reunion. And they do this every year. This was a horrible song.
The only one who could sing was the backup singer.
Yeah, and I noticed you weren't even listening to the words, but they were really bad.
Yeah, it was about Gino.
Yeah, part of it, and it was about southern Italy and south, and I'm not sure they're from southern Michigan. This is about as far south as you get. No matter where I go, I'm still called a Yankee. I don't care what you do. I'm from this is my part of the country. I'm from a little more south than Canton in Michigan. I'm as far south as you can get. But this...
I'm not thinking that you should lay claim to
I'm
your
not.
roots,
I'm just being honest. One, as someone from the area, we can criticize each other. I think you need to back off.
Well, I can criticize you all I want to.
You
We've been married almost 30 years.
I understand. You spent a lot of time in northern Arkansas.
When I was...
I'm just saying, we can do this, right? So
3 to 5,
if
3.5 to 5.
If we go into this northern Arkansas, the town that you're from in Arkansas. Now I know you weren't born there.
It was not northern.
Well, it is still kind of northern. Like
Not
this is
really.
East Texas, right? It's in the northern half of Arkansas. It's
Okay.
so it's still you're either southern or northern. There's no in the middle.
I don't think people in Arkansas talk about being North Arkansas or South Arkansas.
I get it.
That's not a thing.
Well, I'm not gonna do to Arkansas what you did. But the famous person from your hometown would be John Daly. You probably don't know who John Daly is. Those of you who
Isn't
do
that a
know,
golfer?
yes, John Daly, the golfer. This should tell.
You forget my past.
You should tell not anyone who knows who John Daly is, and just. If you didn't know where he was from, this should tell you a lot. So you left there when you were young.
Yes.
Your other young influence would be like, I don't know, where Claire and Sophie are from. That would be your other influence.
Right, exactly.
So when I bring up Southern Michigan, maybe you ought to back off a little bit.
Just saying.
Look, how about Gino's family changing tune here?
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you feel about them all backing her now? I'm like, bravo, she's made a lot of progress.
Well, the uncle was still he gave, the 3 points, deal with it, get out, or, adapt.
Yeah,
change.
well, it's because he's probably a male chauvinist, much like Gino.
Yeah, it seemed like he was a bit short with her. It's like it's her turn to do whatever. You can deal with it, you can change, or you can...
Yeah, you notice Uncle doesn't have a wife.
Yeah, I don't think this guy does, right?
Right.
I could be wrong.
A perpetual bachelor like Gino.
Right.
Can't keep anybody. There's a reason for that.
But this lady was all over Gino.
Yeah.
This was wife of cousin, I believe, is who this was.
That he's so close to.
But he was, you saw him a couple of times, the cousin. He was he kind of like covered his eyes.
Yeah.
And it's like,
he looks like appalled. Yeah, this is not good.
Yeah, because Gino made it a big deal. Like, I've got to take her to the gym.
It's a lot of driving. Like, you don't have a job, dude. What else are you doing with your time?
And I think they're still in Canton.
And the whole purpose was to spend time with each other.
Well, so is it really then? Gino's...
But obviously she has to have some interest because she knows no one here.
Yeah. And it's a tough... Look, I mean, say what you want. It's a tough part of the country. It's not like it's a city where public transportation is just an easy thing. It's just not. It's not like you're in Detroit or Cleveland or New York. It's not that simple.
Right, and if he didn't want to work out, he could drive her there. I mean, she's probably there an hour or something. He could drive her there and sit outside and drink his smoothie and
look at his porn.
Watch porn on his phone.
He could do all of those things.
He could make good use of time. He could sit in the parking lot and take care of his needs.
He could need dark windows or something.
He probably does anyway.
Yeah, that's something from him. But this is not a surprise. They got on him.
Not at all.
So this is why you stayed home. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And this troubles him. How much time can it really take?
Right. What else is he going to be doing with his time?
Look, this is just a fantasy football deep dive. You set your roster like on Wednesday night, and that's pretty much it. Maybe you do some roster moves on Tuesday, but Tuesday and Wednesday are the only days you're really doing anything.
I remember you used to do it.
Yeah. I did it with some friends from high school. We have a league. We still kind of do. Sometimes you go forget to do it for the week. But if you do, it takes like 35 or 45 minutes. Unless he's got like 100 teams or he's gambling or who knows what he's doing. He doesn't seem like a gambler.
Yeah.
But
because he'd have to spend money.
Yeah. I mean, maybe his money's gone. His money's on
porn.
Yeah. I think you could, I don't know, it's the internet. I think you can get this stuff for free, probably, I would assume. I wouldn't think you have to pay for it.
I think it probably works like you get, the first 2 minutes free, and then you got to pay to finish it or whatever. I'm sure it's that kind of thing.
So way
it's out of my league.
Out of our league. I love that you are the one advising on the operation of the porn industry.
Well, I had somebody in my family with this issue, so
I get it, but we weren't.
That was my only introduction to it.
We weren't there, right?
Was that like, wow, this is on my computer? How did this get here?
His attitude about her attitude at the reunion, and you're not going to act like this at the reunion. His general treatment of her is changed, has it not?
Very much so.
Like his general tone.
He used to act like, when he was in her country and he was visiting, he used to act like he was afraid of her.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's just mean.
He does seem mean.
And kind of rude.
Yeah.
And I'm not liking Gino at all.
So
I think he's being an ass.
This control thing, I don't know that it's perceived. I think that he hadn't done her paperwork yet. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And when you put all this together, it just seems tough for me. I just don't like his attitude. Like something's up. So.
Yeah, something has definitely changed.
Mm.
And not for the better.
Yeah. Her being calm is what throws me for a loop.
I think it honestly could be that because they're together now all the time and not, a relationship from afar, she has figured out what his problem is. And I think maybe he feels vulnerable that he's been found out. There's somebody who knows he has this problem. And I think he's turned on her because of that.
Or maybe his routine. Look, his routine's probably changed. You know how I get when my routine's all messed up.
Yeah.
Things are all out of whack.
He could go there and visit her for a time and come back and be right back into his porn routine. And, he doesn't have the free time to do that without her knowing about it. And, I think it's an issue.
I'm sure she knows even more.
I'm sure she does.
The thought of
I said from the beginning he had a real bad creep factor.
I mean, we're not going to get too deep into the details here, but that he would know that they were going to be intimate. He would go and take care of himself before and then say, I couldn't wait. This is just odd. I mean, we had a more, I guess, I don't want to say disgusting, but a more detailed conversation between the two of us that we probably won't get into here about what your attitude would be if something like that was going on. you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like it was about having to get warmed up.
Yeah, if you got to get warmed up, then you can take that back where you were. You can go finish that over there.
Whatever.
I mean, seriously, if I'm not enough to interest you or spark your interest, then you can take that where your interest lies.
Yeah.
I'm not your finisher. I mean, that's just gross.
In baseball, right? It's called a closer, is what you would be. You would be the closer. You're the one that comes in and finishes out the game.
That's gross. It's so insulting. Can you imagine how small that makes her feel? And that's exactly what she said. She feels like nothing. That is gross.
Well,
that he would even expect that.
We suspect this is kind of where it is with Rob and Sophie. We don't maybe have the history of here. Right. But I think you see it manifest itself more in Sophie's attitude of, am I not enough?
Right, exactly. And he has the same defensive, gaslighting responses that Gino has here.
I'd almost like to see a montage of the two of them, of Gino and Rob's responses to these things. And just to see them.
Very similar.
And I think we'd find that was the same.
They get loud and cussing and arguing and gaslighting.
Yeah, because you see Gino is like that.
Right.
That Jasmine was so calm outside. This was almost like, I don't know who.
He couldn't hack it.
I don't know who this is and why is she not yelling. I felt, we're talking about Rob and Sophie, I felt when Rob and his partner were together that I needed subtitles or something. It just shows how disconnected I am from, I guess, this whole generation. And I would think Rob is closer to ours, but maybe he just hasn't, I don't know. He's in his mid-30s. I just wouldn't think that this would be how he'd be speaking at this point. I didn't understand. I played a clip for you of June Cleaver, Barbara Billingsley in Airplane, of her speaking jive.
She called it.
Yeah, her speaking jive. And this is what I needed. I needed Barbara Billingsley in there to interpret for me. My G and fam, and normally I could be like taking notes and popping at the screen and looking. Here, when they were talking, I had to stand up and go over in front of the screen and actually listen. It would be like
a Google Translator for modern lingo.
Yeah, because I'm just not there. I just missed all of this. I can't tell if, and I know there's a disconnect between, I'm 20 to 25 years older than this whole group of people. So I get that we're not speaking the same. But I don't know if they were saying intelligent things or not. Because it seemed like they were getting on her about the green card, and this would be a green card issue. And they were pretty convinced that it was. And I just don't necessarily get that from her. Your thoughts on her and the green card and staying and going?
You're talking about Sophie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think now it's kind of like she was saying to her mom and friend that, she never wanted to come here. But now that she's here, she started life over, made new friends, and she doesn't necessarily want to leave and go back and start all over again.
Again.
Yes, and so I can understand that because her mom's here now for whatever reason. And so I can understand that, and obviously if they break up before her green card's processed, then she has to go back.
But wouldn't she be then living there and riding this out, living with him to do this?
Only if she was trying to be deceptive in order to get her green card, which is not what she's doing. Mm-hmm. And that should signal to him that that's not her primary motivation in not being with him. Yeah, it's that she can't stand him because he's horrible.
Right. I think for her, I think she is really, and we saw her break down. I think she's lost, right? Obviously, the relationship with her mom is tragically
poor.
Yes. And maybe
she's
worse
never
than that.
had maybe a solid support relationship in her life. And so she doesn't really know what that looks like. And so I agree. She's a lost person.
She's like running away from home. You know, I think maybe this would be like my situation. Like I ran away from home to the Army, and home followed me.
Right. And then
so
you ran to Virginia to me, and it just happened to work out.
So is that all this? I'm still running away from home. That's what all this is. Well, Sophie ran, and Mom followed.
Yeah.
And
right,
it
exactly.
looks like she's there because of the knee problem. I'm assuming whatever this accident was that she had and trouble with her boyfriend.
I think I read about that in the news at some point in recent months. I think
it was the New York Times, right?
An ATV. Yeah, I think she had an ATV accident. Is what it was.
Well, this was, remember Brittany on the ATV when she flipped over?
Yes.
So I'm trying to laugh trying not to laugh at her, but.
I saw her the other day, and I was like, "She looks familiar. Which character is she?" I couldn't remember her name, and it was her. It was Brittany.
Brittany, not
like,
Tiffany.
Where do I know
said
her
Tiffany,
from?
But you're right. It's Brittany.
It was Brittany.
Neat how we can both talk about the same person and use two different names and still know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I knew who you were talking about.
Well, we haven't had too many people flip over an ATV. So, I think. For Sophie to be doing this, I would say Sophie. They said Sophie had to have good, like kind of like long game to be riding the green card thing out this long. And I went, well, that's not long game. Michael's long game. Of all long games that we've seen on the show, Michael's long game is probably the best. What did you think about just Claire's breakdown? I mean, they showed it, so it was real, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Or we don't really know one way or another, so we just kind of forget about it. Mom staying with them, like I started to say, I think it's about the knee. And so she breaks up. Mom's in Texas, has this accident, has some kind of knee problem. It doesn't look as serious as Patrick's, but it looks serious enough that she's wearing this brace. She can at least bend her knee, where it looks like Patrick couldn't. Whatever happened, he couldn't bend his.
Right.
And so that's pretty serious. With knees, they get you moving that thing like the day of surgery.
Yeah, my sister had both of her knees replaced, not at the same time, but consecutively. And both times, they made her get up out of bed like the day of and start walking.
Wow.
So.
But the Claire being there, it's if you haven't read the news about Claire and Sophie, I would encourage you to go do that. For those of you who subscribe and listen to our Inside Scoop, you probably know all the details of that. But Claire being around, and for me, Claire jumps in and says, I'm going to have to intervene. And this is where it's just a huge problem. Because Claire really needs to stay out of this.
Right.
But Sophie's not strong enough to stop her. I don't know that anybody is. Claire is just who she is. Literally like a bull in the china shop. And she doesn't help. I mean, there's nothing that Claire does that's really helpful. She comes in, we laugh because she insults Rob, but that's not helpful. It's not helpful to Rob. I don't even know what's the advice to Claire and Rob. What is it? I don't
know. Probably not. And I said from the beginning, I don't think that Sophie and Rob should have ever gotten together in the first place. There's no way they should have gotten married. They had so many red flags. They were already arguing and fighting all the time and having this bickering and this cold shoulder with each other and stuff. I mean, the stuff that's happening now is just a continuation of what was already happening before the wedding. So I'm not sure why either one of them wanted to get married.
I don't even.
It made no sense to me.
I don't remember if it was Sophie and Rob we talked about, or if it was Liz last. It was probably Liz. We talked about needing to spend some time, like on her own, learning that she is
okay.
That she can be a strong person.
Yes, it is so important, and it's very confidence boosting, empowering. It's a wonderful feeling to go, you know what, I'm by myself and I'm okay with that.
Because to be honest, Sophie's not ready for a relationship.
No.
And Rob's not ready for a relationship. And neither one of them can help the other person through this.
Right.
Like, we kind of joke and I kind of used this the other day outside with a neighbor. Somebody has to be the smartest one in every relationship. Just like I think at some point in every process or in every decision making or conflict in a relationship, kind of somebody has to be the one to get you through it. And neither of them can move forward with anything. Sophie's just not prepared because of really her mom. What we don't know is, and I guess we assume because Rob's in his early to mid 30s, that, Rob hasn't been equipped with those tools either.
Right.
For whatever reason. I mean, it's easy to blame him because we can see Sophie and why Sophie's the way she is because of Claire. What we don't really see is Rob's background and history. So Rob just kind of gets the crappy end of the stick because we don't know his parental history. Mm-hmm. Because we all are just a product of whatever. And it could be, I don't know, he was unparented, or it could be he's just been on his own all this time and then just has turned into this narcissistic, everything's about me. But I don't know when you stop being a product of your upbringing and when you're personally responsible. And I guess we all draw that line for each of them in our own way, in our own discriminatory way. Because Rob could easily be a product of something similar to Sophie.
Sure.
Yep.
But don't we all have crap in our childhoods, how we were raised, things that happened to us, life experiences? We all have some crappy baggage that we have to figure out what to do with.
Yeah.
But, at some point, you have to decide, what are you going to do with that baggage? Are you going to let it, affect your future forever, or are you going to overcome it and let it make you stronger? It's really a choice.
I don't remember the movie, but it's Chris Rock. It's The Rock, and then what he describes it as, he was like a big person and made fun of in high school, and then they went back to the reunion, and Kevin Hart, they go into the gym where he got like really made fun of. And they said, doesn't it bring back bad memories from you? He says something like, no, I've taken all that. I've crammed it into this big tight ball, and I crammed it way deep down inside of me. And that's where it is. And so I'm really good with where it's at. And so, that's what we do. But we know, and even if you listen to our podcast, from years ago, I think the first... because we kind of started with a personal podcast and then more. Our first 10 episodes of the personal podcast turned out to be, I don't know, it was more therapy sessions than it was anything else. But that's what happens. And so, and you're right. So we all deal with it in our own way. And I guess for us, is, we're a podcast and we talk about relationships. And so it'd be boring if we just said, you're what you are.
You either dwell on it and let it, continue to affect your life. Sure, your experiences and the crappy things that you've been through change who you are. That is an absolute fact. But you still have a choice whether you're going to dwell on it and swim in the mud, or if you're going to climb out and rinse yourself off and move on.
And it's how you treat other people.
Right.
Growing up in, I would say, generations, for me, of horrible marital decisions. Mm-hmm. Generations. You kind of learn, either I'm going to make this mistake myself, or I'm just going to make sure that I choose a really solid life partner. Uh-huh. And you never know. I mean, I assume
Right, you don't.
most people when they get married think they chose the right person.
Right. Well, I mean, I've always said, you really can't know who you've married because people can show you what they want you to see of themselves. And you can't know any better because some people are good at hiding it. And maybe they show you later when it's too late. And then you got to deal with it.
Like Gina and
so
Jasmine.
That's why it's so scary to get married. There's got to be a lot of stuff you really like about your life partner.
But
things
it should
that
be
are
the
really
easy...
solid, so that if there are things that come out later, you can deal with that.
And this part should be the easy part for most of these families. Most of these couples. This should be the easier part.
Yes, this should be the fun part.
Well, happily ever after, ? Is this, so it is. Now that we're married, now,
Are we happily ever after?
Yes, so that would be it. Angela and Michael, I think we're not going to talk about the details of Angela and Michael, but I think she's just never going to be a happy or satisfied person.
No, with anyone. No.
And
it's not happening.
There's
nothing he could do.
If you didn't know of these two, and for some reason this was the first episode you ever saw, when he came in at the end of the episode, when he came in the door, and she told him to sit.
Her words to him were sit like
Michael.
a dog.
Sit. Right.
Sit. Beg.
Yeah, and if you have to pee, go outside.
And hang it outside is what she said.
Yeah, that's it.
It's great. No.
How about her playing the victim now?
Yeah, so over it. I'm so over her.
It's so funny.
However many seasons we've had her for, it's been that many seasons too many.
Although we did laugh because we watched this on Discovery Plus, and it flipped into, I don't even know what it was.
It always does.
It was like, this one
it flips right into her.
This was her reaction to Pillow Talk. So for some season, I guess it must have been the COVID period where they were really hurting for content. They had the cast members reacting to Pillow Talk. And this was it. It was all about her one egg, and she was still having her time.
Toting her egg.
And it was her egg. And so this was great. My one egg. And that was almost the fun part. Look back at that and you remember the laughs and the fun. Right. And this was just...
she's so ridiculous.
This is about when she was just annoying, but she hadn't turned into the abuser that she is.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what happened with her. She's a hot mess.
Well, you get so big, right? And I'm not talking about size big, but she thinks...
just gets too big for her britches.
Yeah, she thinks she's more than she is.
Yeah.
And I think she sounded like she was slurring. So,
yeah, I was going to say, I think she drinks quite a bit.
We saw this. Could it be making up? I mean, look, I'm way out of line here, but I don't know. I mean, she's had this stomach surgery. So would this lead, if she can't eat like that, she obviously hadn't quit smoking, so maybe... I could still see her leaning on smoking. Maybe she's leaning on drinking because she can't eat like she used to, where food used to be a thing for her. Could this be something, or could she just be drinking a lot?
I mean, I think she likes attention. She lost all this weight and tried to fix her teeth and, do all these physical things.
Something's wrong with her teeth. We don't talk physical, but something happened in there, and whoever is wrong.
You know what it is, don't you?
Her smoking.
Don't you remember what happened? Her teeth were so bad. The bone was bad. And she was not able to get implants in the top. It was only in the bottom. And so she has a partial denture in the top, like a partial implant and partial denture. And so one whole half of her teeth comes out at night.
My dad was like that.
Yeah,
we
so it's got to be awkward.
He had a well, even before it was, maybe, I guess he'd have spent time in jail if in this era, but in the early 70s, a DUI didn't get you in jail, or multiple DUIs didn't get you in jail, but he bit a steering wheel, on an accident and just busted out his top plate.
Wow.
So he had he would pull it out. And so for us, he would just tell us, right? You can't pull it out? And so he would always pull it out, and it was his front 6 teeth is what it was. So he had a plate that went in there.
Both of my parents ended up with, they never did any dental care, and they both ended up with complete full sets of false teeth, which they never wore. So they were just toothless in their old age. So there's that.
It's Michael says in this, and I think it's so sit, Michael, sit, right? And he says this, she's not listening to a thing I say. These right. 2 things would go, if I want to know anything about this relationship, this is a pretty good place to go, other than she's beat him up a couple of times. The preview has him throwing another drink at him.
Wow.
And we're not ruling out, let's be for real, let's not rule out a chance that Michael's still scamming her.
Oh, I think he was. But, I'm pretty sure that he was, maintaining contact with other ladies all along so that he'd have backups. So that when he leaves her, he'd have somebody to leave her too. You
think he's got somebody advising him?
Sure. Well, let's not forget the reason why he hadn't been able to come is because Nigeria is blacklisted for immigration because of all the scamming. So, that's why it's been so many years.
He could just get a mercy visa. This is what it would be. I would just send all the years of footage.
Well, I bet you that if it was legal, he could just put up a GoFundMe and half of America would contribute to bringing him over because he earned it. Putting up with her all these years.
I can't argue
I guarantee you. I guarantee you. Somebody would fund his visa.
But no she's doubt. Playing the victim right now.
Of course.
Is it helpful? We're not. The trouble is, I can't imagine anybody being new to 90 Day at this point.
Right.
Hey, I just started watching.
If you were just watching it and this was the state of 90 Day, you wouldn't keep watching it.
So what it is we're all trapped, right? We're like Michael.
We're trapped.
I'm 4 years, but we're 10 years into this. And
we're invested.
And we're trapped. We're going to ride this thing out till the end.
But pretty soon we're getting a divorce.
You know what? We need therapy. You, me.
I'm divorcing 90 Day.
And Matt
it's coming
Sharp.
Real soon.
We need to sit down and get in some therapy.
Bye-bye.
Right. It'd be like Gino's uncle said, right? You're either going to change, you're either going to deal with it, or you're going to move on. One of those 3 things. And so that decision's going to come at some point soon. As we eyeball 60 days in and inmate to roommate.
Right.
We're eyeballing
anything else.
What it is I think maybe it would be like when I was, in the electrical world and they were recruiting me and I was going to, kind of the Steve Burgess tour around the country.
Yeah.
It was that's what it is, right? So A&E, I believe, is wooing us right now.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And the thing is, back in the day before Discovery, A&E was my channel. I always watched A&E shows, in Virginia when we had little kids.
A&E was the first one to syndicate Law and Order. And so, the old Lenny, who was it, Lenny Briscoe?
Yeah.
The old Lenny episodes of Law and Order are the best.
The best.
Yeah, they just are.
For sure.
So that is sad. This is where we are. Lauren and Lexi, not a lot with them. They introduced the war in Israel this time, and I was a little, I stopped and I listened to this. I wanted to hear.
You're paying close attention.
Wanted to hear everybody's words.
Reaction.
And how they handled this. And nobody really mentioned until his father mentioned the attack on Israel, is what he said. And so other than that, they stayed non-political and non-detailed, but that did make it through, for what it's worth. And we're not getting into the details of it, but that was the only fact or thing that was reported as fact that came out in it. And we know Lauren and Alexi are pretty vocal about this, especially Lauren, which doesn't surprise us at all.
Right. No.
Because this is Lauren. Even though Alexi's more invested in what happens there.
This is family's there.
Lauren is the one who...
crying tears.
Yeah, she is. I was watching her face, and, you almost like to see the raw footage to know while he's talking about going back there and feeling some responsibility to do something, and to watch her face. I almost wanted it to be like, I expect it to be more like Thais's face. When they talk about John. I was really watching because I wanted to see how invested she was. You can be angry about something, but you can be angry about it and go, I'd like to do something.
From afar.
But I'd like somebody else to do something.
Right. I'll just send money.
And this is, maybe it's not fair, but it's it would be my impression of Lauren. We could donate to them, but I don't want you to. And it's not, nobody wants their spouse and the father of their children to go to war.
Right.
But if this is something you feel...
If you feel that strongly about it.
Yeah, and it kind of made me think big picture 90-day. We've seen it with Ukraine, and it's kind of happening. But this is one of the first times we've seen, somebody who'd served in the military have their country have been involved in something that I remember. So it made me think of how hard this would be for people. And we kind of saw Yara, right? And
because in Israel, all men, when they come of age, have to serve. Yeah,
it's conscription, and they're not the only country. I mean, they all do it in some way. And like Germany, you've got to serve, or you can go into another profession. That's ultimately you have to serve. If you're not in the military, then you're in the medical field. There's other
support.
Yes, there's other things you could do that aren't military related. But it made me think about people who are gone away from home, and this period where, and Alexi's not in this period, but there's a period where you can't go back.
Yeah.
And so it has to be tough for them. I'm surprised Dad didn't immediately go back, aren't you?
Well, yes. And Alexi said that is what he wanted to do. But Alexi convinced him not to.
He has another brother there.
Yes,
and it talked about them having bomb shelters, and it's just a whole part of the world that we're really immune from.
Right.
We don't have those things to deal with.
Right. Just in case. I mean, I guess back in the 80s, there were people with money who would build, fallout shelters and stuff during the Cold War.
These are just normal people.
This is like everybody. Yeah, everybody's ready in case there's bombing.
And that's just got to be a hard way to live.
Right. Well, it's like during the bombing with Germany in England. My mom was in school then, and she talked about the air raid
This
sounds.
is World War II we're talking about.
Yes. The air raid sounds and her, having to go to the bomb shelter from the school, and stuff like that. Like that was part of their childhood. And I can hardly fathom what that must be like to live in that kind of fear.
Or it just how you grow up. And even think about, we didn't grow up with that, right? And that means our children, so now we're getting to be ultimately 3 generations removed from that type of upbringing. That's where we are now. Now, our parents, my parents didn't have to deal. My parents are a little younger than yours.
Yeah, mine were older.
Right. So, but we're removed from that. And so it gets everybody a bit removed. And say what you want, it may be more of an editorial about where we are and the people that the Rob and the Sophies that you get, that what are real problems and what aren't real problems, and what are things you can work through and things you can't.
Mm-hmm.
But when I see Alexi impacted more than Lauren here, but she seems to be. But we don't know. I mean, they all have family members and in that area, or people that they know. So it's, it's probably tough to comment and not fair to comment on that. While we can do other things like comment on Patrick and Thais and John. How about John's reaction to Patrick's dad?
Yeah, you can tell. He probably put up with some crap in his childhood.
John,
I looked at you. I said, "This sounds like your stepdad, one of your stepdads."
Yeah, but this, I don't think they spent a lot of time together. He said something about he bought you a moped
for Christmas and sold it 2 months later.
Wow.
I went, wow, that's some crap, man. That's pretty bad.
You get credit for giving a gift and then it's gone.
Yeah, and you wouldn't forget something like that as a kid.
No, this is an awkward little thing. So is Patrick trying to almost buy his father's affection?
Yes, that's what it seems like.
Through labor and money.
He looks like a child when
he does. You're right.
They're talking about his dad.
Yep. And
he looks like a little boy who's trying to gain favor with daddy. And maybe if I am good, he'll give me some attention.
It's hard to be critical.
Yeah. I feel bad for him.
Right.
I mean, it makes him look pathetic.
Yeah, and I don't mean that we don't.
No.
Because I kind of grew up in a similar
harsh
thing.
To him, but saying that it's sad that this is what he has amounted to emotionally from his childhood. That's terrible.
I'm impressed of it looks like the father and husband he's become. So we've talked about it, right? This is even in this episode. You're a product of your parental relationships. It looks like Patrick has done things to break the cycle.
Right.
It
Good
appears.
For him. That's what I mean. Impressive, because, when it comes to his dad, he's still a little boy inside.
Yeah, you see it right away.
Yes.
He's just a broken little boy looking for his father's affection.
Yeah, it was so sad. And the guy's just laughing and smirking about it like he knows he's manipulating him.
He's probably
everybody
a bad
there.
Person.
I bet he is. Yeah. Everybody there in the room knows that he's manipulating him except Patrick. Yeah. And I think Patrick knows it too. He's just trying to see it differently.
Because he still wants to be there for his dad.
Right.
Charging him for the baby's party?
So bad. And making him work on his house.
That's horrible. We don't mean to make fun of it, right? But, wow.
Charging him for the apartment. Charging him for having the party there. It's terrible.
I'm really glad John's there, because I think John's not putting up with that crap.
No, and Patrick is fully being taken advantage of.
So if Thais was upset about John being there, this is probably, because this is something that needs fixing.
Yes. Yeah, because he can't go on doing this.
I think Patrick and Thais are okay as a couple.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we would have said that. Look, we saw Kalani and Asuelu. It rolled into Angela, and then Kalani and we were laughing.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, look at these two. It's kind of cute the way they banter and get along and making fun of the dad's beard.
Back in the good days.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what happened? But I do think Patrick and Thais are probably in a very workable place.
Yeah.
Their problems
Even though she's terribly moody, he's probably used to that with his dad.
Yeah. But she's got stuff to deal with. I mean, there's John and the dad, and that's a whole big thing, right? Her biggest problem...
But she's like that all the time. I mean, John doesn't live with them anymore.
Yeah, here's what this woman has to learn. And I don't come from a place of experience. But after you have a baby...
Do not wear one piece when you have to go pee.
Well, I think here's the thing, is always anticipate that how am I going to pee...
Yes.
With this thing on.
I can tell you that is my main thought process when I get dressed. How can I pee most readily? I think I'll wear a dress. It works for me. I pee a lot. I'll admit, probably more than most people. I have a very small bladder, and I have to go very frequently. This is the story of my life. I have peed in my car in a 3-piece suit with heels and pantyhose in a stick shift in the middle of the highway, backed up on my way to work. So have done it. Have squatted in a parking garage. I mean, you do what you got to do.
So describe to me, because you saw, we watched the beginning of this separately and then came together at the end. We always try to do 2 things at once whenever possible. So as we were meeting in the middle, I said, did you happen to see what Thais was wearing? And you became animated immediately. So describe to me what Thais would have had to have done when she left the car to go and pee.
Well, I'm not even sure she was wearing a bra. She would have had to have stripped naked in order to pee, like down to her knees.
But then,
and you saw her doing it. You saw her pulling her straps down.
So she had
to peel this off herself.
From the top down, right?
Yes.
This has to go down, and her shoes are still on at this point. So she is completely naked with this thing wrapped around her legs, and then she has to find a way to squat. And evidently, it was not a good scenario, and she peed on herself.
Well, because what happens is you have this around your knees, so you can't part your legs enough to lap to the puddle.
What kind of podcast
and so the
is
puddle is created under your shoes. I've been there.
But you have to think about this.
Yes, you certainly do. and if this has ever happened to you, you think about it from that day forward.
So this almost makes her seem relatable, right?
Yes.
Did you think better of Thais after this scene of her trying to go to the bathroom? Because she comes back
because at this stage of life, she should have not put on this one-piece outfit.
Well, she learned, right? She learned today, this is a problem. This piece, when you take this thing off and it's got pee stains on it and it smells like urine, you go, this is going in the garbage because I'm never going to wear this again. Or I'm modifying it and putting a flap in this thing. But you don't wear the one piece. You're not wearing this thing with a flap. I mean, you're just not. It's not that kind of piece. You'd wear it to bed if it had a flap in it. But you're not wearing it out in public with a flap.
No.
So I felt her relatable at this point. And I did of John, too. I mean, I thought John's reaction to him, to the dad, Jose, was very telling. He looked angry. He looked like he didn't want to hug him, and he looked disgusted by him. John wears his heart on his sleeve, so...
Yes. Yeah, he did look repulsed.
Somebody had been wronged by this man.
Yes.
And this is from a guy...
And Jose acted like, oh, hey, how's it going? Haven't seen you. Yep. You know, been a long time. And he was not having it.
No. I know you.
He's like, I haven't seen this man in 20 years, and there's a reason.
Yeah. And this is from a guy who eats cake with his hands.
Yeah.
That was disgusting.
Yeah.
There's something that bothers me about that. And I don't want to get too descriptive, but we have somebody who sometimes eats with us and doesn't use utensils. And I know that we all know when it's going on, and you know I'm bothered by it.
Yes, I know.
And I don't say anything, but you know how much it bothers me.
Uh-huh.
So when I see John just reaching his hand into the cake.
In the cake. That was funny. I did find it hilarious, though, that she tried to blame the dirty dishes on him, and he didn't even use any.
He did
and
not
there was
use
video
dishes.
to prove it.
And
it was because they didn't clean up after themselves.
Yeah, it's not John's fault. Yeah, because it looked like potatoes or something. That must really smell bad.
Who goes to bed and doesn't do their dishes? This is a pet peeve of mine.
I think people do that. So I know you have the way that you live, but there are many people who don't live like that.
Oh, that's a pet peeve for me.
Just understand that.
I had to leave a couple of large pots in the sink because I was exhausted. And I loaded the dishwasher, and I've been cooking all day because I was playing catch up this weekend. And I said, I hate to do it, but I'm going to leave these, 3 or 4 big, pots I'd boil pasta in, stuff like that just needed to be hand washed and put away in the sink until the morning. And you looked at me and you go, but can you sleep if you do that? Because you know me.
Right.
This is the kind of stuff that'll make me get back up out of bed and go do it.
Yeah.
I said, I'm so exhausted this time. Yes, I'm going to bed.
I don't know you anymore. Not a lot.
Like 5 hours of sleep.
Not a lot to Emily and Kobe this week. I think other than her trusting him. And I wish, like, this is one of those things I wish I hadn't seen the preview. But ultimately, living in the past doesn't do them any good.
No.
You know, for her, you know, the question she just asked, you know, do you have memories of her here? And, you know, did you even ask her to come? There's all of these things. And if it turns out that Kobe has been dishonest with her about this, it's really bad on his part.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to say, don't you trust me?
Yeah.
It's an excuse.
I mean, I could see him saying, you know, this is what happened, but does it really matter now? I'm sorry, I wasn't completely honest at the time, but, you know, I hope we can move past this. We've been married all these years, have these kids, and, you know, I'm a different person now. So
hopefully the preview that we saw isn't real, because that would be really, really bad if he was honest here. And it's about it still is about, you can say it's about trust and you asking, but it's also about honesty when you are asked. There's lines in both of them, and neither of them can be broken. His
casual attitude about it and kind of laughing like it's so ridiculous.
No, it is
would lead
ridiculous.
me to believe that he's got nothing to hide.
But the preview made it seem other different.
Yeah, but they do
typical.
that a lot.
It's pretty typical.
Creative editing.
For her, it's I won't let it go until I find out. You know, it's this kind of stuff that we would expect from her one way or another. I didn't like her referring to her kids as her getting knocked up. I said, this seems, I don't know.
She didn't say, was this going on after I was pregnant? She says, after he knocked me up, like it was his fault.
Well, I wouldn't even go into the default. I would just go into it seemed like a crude way to describe
it is, for multiple reasons.
The wonderful act of you having your children knocked up.
Well, I'm bothered by the fact that she acted like she wasn't a participant in it.
Well, I mean, that's true, right?
It was done to her.
So I guess so. Well, maybe he's good at it, you know?
Well, I mean, you remember her description of their shower days.
I don't, but maybe I just erased it from my mind, which is probably better.
Best.
For her, you know, we were watching this. We got to this part together, and she said, "I understand why he isn't happy, but I just gotta." And then once anybody says, "I understand this is what you're thinking, but I gotta do this," it means I hear you, and I'm going to ignore everything that you want from me because
so I can speak.
Yeah, so I can do this thing because this is what I gotta do. I gotta do this. We don't have to do this. So she might be right. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I think for me, the most fun couple this week was Ashley and Manuel.
Yeah.
That was fun.
What a mess.
That
was fun. That translator was hysterical. He leaned forward on his knees and smiled like, wow, I got to see this up close. This is a great show.
You know, he's probably never seen the show before.
Where's my popcorn?
This is the best. This is the best thing ever.
I have a front row seat.
She starts the whole thing with, you know why we're doing this, don't you? You know, it's just so, she's just treating him like a kid. And then she's trying to justify everything that she does. And this $100,000 is a real thing. She's 32, has 3 degrees, and I don't know what her degrees haven't helped her with is pay off her student debt. This has not been a thing for her.
Right. I'm trying to figure out why she would go into debt $100,000 for 3 degrees to do what she's doing. Oh, what did she go to? Tarot school?
No, here's what it is, right? She went to entrepreneurship school. Here's what surprises me is, you remember the big deal when she went to New York and they were going to be with his family and they were going to ask what she does and she was going to have to tell him that she's a witch? This was a big deal. Well, there's no way for me not to tell him that I'm a witch. So here she is in front of the lawyer. She's asked a direct question about what she does. And somehow the witch thing isn't even mentioned. I'm not a witch. I'm an entrepreneur.
Yes.
We're all flipping entrepreneurs, I guess, in some way, right? I'm not even sure what the word means.
We're entrepreneurs of podcast shows.
Sure, why not? We could be an entrepreneur of we're not in debt for it anymore.
Did she say that?
A less than successful podcast, right? That could be it. So we could describe ourselves as that. Yeah. That's what we are.
Yeah.
We're not in debt like she is.
Right. Exactly.
Finally, so that happened, right?
We didn't need 3 degrees.
We're at least at a break-even point.
Right.
It just makes me think, what was she doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
And then she stumbled on this witchery.
Well, I mean, we kind of know somebody like that, don't we? That's kind of a perpetual student. I mean,
sure.
There are people that do that.
Mm. I think there's a time where, and this is just the way we're wired, right? That you just got to go.
Yes.
It's just time and I got to go.
Right. Get started with life.
With whatever it's going to be, let's just go.
Yeah.
She said this, I don't want him to have anything of mine that I don't give to him. I went, this seems wrong to me, right? Yeah. Is this a bad attitude or was I just taken aback by that?
I cringed at that too. That was not good.
Mm. You know, because even when we started, you were already going.
Right.
When we met, I wasn't going yet.
Right.
I was just coming out of the military and having to start
over again.
So you were, I mean, we weren't here, right? I could at least work, even though I didn't.
Right.
Right.
Well, you didn't have a job when we got married.
Well, I mean, I could have, right? So there was a 2-month period, 2.5 months where.
Right.
Almost 3 where I wasn't working.
Right.
So, you know.
And I had a house and a car and a job that I'd established a career.
You should have had a prenup. We should have seen a prenup lawyer. Should they go together to this lawyer? Oh, this is the stage thing.
That seems, well, I mean, I guess they're not supposedly adversarial at this point. And normally, you know, you would have separate attorneys like if you were divorcing to represent your separate interests. But I mean, here they're doing this together, deciding on it together, deciding on the terms. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess if you were suspicious of your spouse, then you would have a separate lawyer draw up your half.
Well, it seems to me like you would do that. If you're going to do this, you would bring your own lawyer to the table. But then that's just a divorce attorney. And why don't we just go ahead and file for divorce? This is just over.
And she'd have to pay for it because he can't work yet.
Here's the thing. She threw out a number of like in 5 years when her online spiritual it's $1 million. I'm like, I couldn't stop laughing. It's still
I'm like, huh?
I wanted her to say in the after interview, I'm not going to give him $500,000. Like she had already worked this out. Like we're going to be at $1 million and I'm going to have $500,000 and I'm not going to give it to him. There's no way that's going to happen. When you're making $87.24 a month with your online spiritual advisor, pre-expenses, this is where you're at, right? And so $1 million. I mean, she could, I guess. This could all take off for her in some weird way, I guess. I don't want him to have anything that I don't give him. Well, this $100,000 does make a difference, right? And you could say it's her debt, and as they're going back and forth, this lawyer's only talking when you separate.
Right.
But let's just stay with them being together. This $100,000 is real money that has to be paid every month.
Yeah, and that's why he was freaking out. And he was saying, why are you spending all this money? And he even said at the end, how can we keep sending money to my family if it's creating more debt in America because you aren't paying off this debt?
Sure.
And so, you know, at least he's being real about it, you know.
So let's assume 14 years ago.
That means that she's been less than honest and forthcoming with him. She's got her own secrets because she hasn't told him about this debt. And she's, being stingy with her money and, making him beg, borrow, and steal for what he gets from her to send to his family without explaining that she has all this debt. Because she knows his response would be, then why are you spending all this money?
He seems to be a guy, if that debt was there, that he'd be a guy that would knock that out.
Yes, he would just pay every chance he got until he didn't have a debt.
He would eat a cucumber for dinner.
This is us, right? We're this guy.
Yeah. I don't want to have debt.
No. House and car is the limit of our
14 years
desire
ago,
to have debt.
I mean, I get it. When you're 18, you don't know what you're going to do. So you go to school, and then you still don't know, and you keep going. And you go, I'm not sure what I want to do. This works for me. But it gets people in debt. These schools, they charge so much, so much for little.
That's why he's so shocked, because he can't fathom that someone would spend this kind of money on schooling, because that would never happen where he's from. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't cost that, even if you went.
Yeah.
So, this is just not even fathomable for him.
It's the problem here, even with our system, right? You could look at it like a simple business, right? Be an entrepreneur, and what's my return on investment?
Yeah, my thing is, if you're going to spend this much money on school, it better be for a doctor, lawyer, something with
I'm going big.
High yield return, because you're going to spend the first few years
not years,
paying
decades.
off your debt.
Yeah. And so, look, we come at it from our own bias, right? I come from the Army, and then I went into a trade. So that's just my background, and so that's probably our experience.
School.
No.
We both did school at night. We both wanted to go to school, but we weren't willing to go in debt for it.
Yeah. That's why I joined the Army. I just didn't want to. I couldn't see going into debt. And my dad, who's not like Patrick's dad, he made too much for me to qualify for student aid, and he wasn't contributing to my school, so that just wasn't
exactly
same. It just wasn't happening.
And I planned to go to the military to get money for school
while he was a parent.
I was actually in the delayed entry program, and that was my plan all along. But I was going to go to pharmacy school, but I had a physical defect, and it didn't work out.
Right.
So I started working, or continued working, my several jobs I already had, because you do what you got to do.
I don't know how you can ignore the 100,000 because it impacts their monthly budget.
Sure.
And that makes it real. It's a number that has to be addressed each month.
Yep. And it doesn't sound like she's probably paying much on it.
Yeah, and we don't know how that works. I just don't know. But it's not free. Maybe she's hoping that it gets just forgiven.
Well, I can tell you from my years of recruiting employment at the bank that so many people's credit reports show defaulted student loans.
Two things.
Defaulted student loans and medical debt.
Yeah.
Those are
Welcome to
very
America.
Common.
Right. Welcome to America.
Yeah.
Right. You go into debt to get educated, and you go into debt to make yourself stay alive.
Right.
This doesn't sound good, right? I mean, it doesn't. It doesn't bode well. These are the two things. You talk about entrepreneurs. Well, they figured out the insurance industry and the education industry, right? And they're killing us, right?
It's
as
terrible.
A country.
We've spent $15,000 in 4 years on my shoulders.
Yeah. And there's still
insurance.
For this, you ought to be like the bionic woman.
Yeah.
That's what you should be.
Yeah, I can't even raise my arm all the way up.
Yeah, this is not good. This is not good. Well, for us, that's it for this week. Just so you know, we are covering Seeking Sister Wife is over. But I think Unexpected starts. I'm not sure when that starts. I think that starts this week. So we're going to watch Unexpected. We don't know whether or not we can fit it into the schedule, because we are covering Inmate to Roommate and 60 Days In. And then we do our Inside Scoop, personal podcast, that kind of stuff. So I do think Unexpected starts tomorrow, though. That's fun. It's a fun show. And not all at the same time. It's more of a sad editorial, but it's what it is. It's trash, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's less manufactured trash and more real trash. And this is the generation that's going to have to take care of us.
Oh, boy.
So that's great. We hope that you all have a wonderful week.
Thank you for listening.
You can listen to additional episodes
by subscribing to our Coupled with Chaos channel on Apple,
by subscribing to our Patreon,
or by subscribing to our Supercast
for $3.99 a month,
where you can hear us talk about reality shows,
real life, and more on our podcasts,
covering shows airing on TLC, A&E, Bravo, and the WE Network.
Just follow the instructions in the show notes.
Tell your friends about this podcast.
And rate and review us on your favorite podcast player.
Follow us at Coupled with Chaos on all the socials.
Or contact us directly by email at coupledwithchaos@gmail.com.